It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday, and it is the feedbackiest day of the week, and I am super tired. It's been a great week in terms of productivity, but I got finished doing a full day of Leanna Care sessions and was like, oh yeah, Feedback Friday. The donated Leanna Care sessions have been super, super helpful. I need to keep up a rate of 3 donations a week to continue to keep the people who are getting the support going. So if you've got $25 you can spare, or you want to do an ongoing monthly donation, help support this channel, ongoing patreon.com/LeannaK, a one-time donation at coffee.com/LeannaK. That's where you can donate the Leanna Care sessions. I know this graphic is not centered with the text. I just emailed Eileen before I did this and was like, please fix this, do a new thumbnail. This hurts my soul. I desecrated your work. So, what was not a desecration is people liking my idea of an authorial coma. One person mentioned, they call it Schrodinger's author, with the idea that, you know, the author is dead until you need them, and then you wake them up, and then when it's not convenient, you put them back to sleep again. I thought about Schrodinger's author. I didn't go with that metaphor just because Schrodinger's cat is a thought experiment where it's like, is the cat dead? Is the cat not dead? You don't know until you open the box. It's not quite the same thing because there's this I believe, cynical intent. And that's probably unkind. That's probably assuming a motivation, not an evidence, because Leanna sorted past. I took some interdisciplinary studies course in university. Same school, same program Anita Sarkeesian went to. And my issue with it, compared to taking, say, a straight up anthropology course where there were modalities, there were methods that you were supposed to use for a correct anthropological approach. When you were in an English literature course, you needed to use English literature techniques. And in anthropology, you had to use anthropological techniques. And both of those shit on the humanities, because whenever you tried to, you know, in anthropology, if you tried to do a personal interpretation of something, they'd be, well, that's a humanities approach. And in English literature, whenever you tried to apply author biography to an analysis of the text, you were told that's a humanities approach. Now, interdisciplinary studies are a thing completely beyond that, because a humanities approach is like, yeah, that's okay. Consistently. You could always use author biography. What goes on in interdisciplinary courses is they have these, you know, alternative readings, and that's fine as long as you have the discipline to be consistent. But you also have to acknowledge that it is an alternative reading, not canon reading. And this is where I've always glanced off the artificial confines of academic approaches. Now, to be clear, I do think that things like cultural relativism and keeping some distance when you are studying a culture is super important. And I'm incredibly glad I took anthropology, even though I had a professor that believed that incest taboos had no bearing in medical science and were just cultural taboos. Yep. Yikes. Still freaked out by that, can you tell? But I'm really glad I took the course because there was a mental discipline there. There was a stick to the theory you're using required, where in the interdisciplinary courses I took, that rigor was not there. And I think that's why Leanna gets so many different outcomes and has such a different kind of starting, middle, and end point to her analysis than a lot of other people talking about video games. And that's why I go like, no, it's a coma, Because, it's like the procedural drama where, the hard-charging cop comes in and goes, wake him up, but it might harm the patient. Wake him up. That's what they're doing with authors every time, or game developers or anything like that, anytime they want. And then it's like, no, it's just what's in the game. It doesn't matter what the author's stated intent is. You can't do that. It's one or the other. And personally, I believe because games are so complex that it does matter what the developer set out to do, right? For instance, it is not fair to criticize a game like, say, Dark Souls or Demon Souls or Bloodborne or Sekiro or anything like that for not being accessible. It's not your standard AAA title, even though, some of those games eventually got AAA publishers. All of them, I think, ended up with AAA publishers. But, the intent is not to be accessible. So that's where we get the werewolf cookbook criticism. This is a cookbook. I like werewolves. There's no werewolves in this cookbook. 1 star. That's not useful criticism, right? There's no point in criticizing a game for not being accessible when the intent was not to be accessible. That's become a AAA thing that's bled into everything else, and no game is for everyone. I want modestly budgeted games to be able to have a fair shot. And the thing about it is, if a modestly budgeted game comes out and does fairly well, and then the developer gets some money, then maybe they can go in and put some accessibility features in. This is what I'm hoping to do with the games I'm making, because there's just no way to make a game made for a shoestring completely accessible. It's just, you do have to make some choices because of your budget. And that shouldn't be something that automatically condemns a game to not good enough, because, that means that only people with over $1 million can actually make a game. And I don't think that's where innovation lies in this space. Far Cry, AAA games like the Far Cry games just have to please too many disparate groups. It's its own art. But let there be space for lots of things, right? Right. Okay. So that brings me to the Blanche Devereux test, which a lot of people liked, which makes me happy. What is the Blanche Devereux test? The Blanche Devereux test was something I said in a video this week, inspired by Blanche Devereux and the Golden Girls. Way ahead of her time in 1985, very, very sexual woman over 50, telling a younger woman, sleep with someone because you like them, not to make them like you. To me, that is the test of sexualized content that is affirming. Because then it's something that feels good, not something you're doing as a calculation. That's really important to me as somebody who's sex positive. I think that is a test we can put in that doesn't single anyone out, right? It's inclusive, it's affirming, it's positive, it's validating, right? So let's use that. We're going to apply that test going forward. Also, watch The Golden Girls. Super awesome show, way ahead of its time. Not every episode holds up by modern standards, but that's part of what makes it awesome. And this brings us... There were a lot of comments about the idea of the escalation in the media and gamers feeling attacked and, that whole cycle. And, some of you may know I was a games journalist at the time when everything blew up from like 2012 to 2015. And, I was someone who did take the side of gamers and the belief that if you're being paid even a little bit of money, or even if you're receiving a game for free, to review it, there is an onus on you to behave like a professional. Yes, people are going to scream at you. People are going to call you names. It's not right, but that was the reality of giving Halo 3 an 8 out of 10 at launch instead of a 10 out of 10. Those were fun days. You're a girl, what do you know? Yeah, people actually felt emboldened to say that back then. What do I know? I've been gaming longer than you've been alive, sir. Sit down, right? But I have felt a real, no, this is not a feeling. This is an opinion. It is a point of massive immaturity in games meaning media and marketing when an article or a video or, a piece of marketing, like remember that campaign, your mom hates Dead Space 2 or something like that. John Romero's going to make you his bitch, that kind of stuff. You take a big swing in marketing and there is an equal and opposite reaction. And then people complain and play the victim how did you not expect that to happen? Now, I say this as somebody who sometimes I'm like, I'm going to take this big swing and let the chips fall where they may. And then other times I'll say something I don't think is terribly contentious and people will twist my words and freak out. Those are very different things. And that's why on Feedback Fridays or in videos themselves, I will sometimes say, I am prepared to take shit for this. This is a hill I'm prepared to die on. So that you guys know when I am being provocative with cause. So you can assume that if I don't say that, I'm not intending to rustle anyone's jimmies. It's very important to be self-aware like that. And I think that part of the breakdown of trust in the games industry has been the inability to put on the big people pants on that point. And I tweeted something earlier this week that I'm more and more believing there are two types of people in this world. One, gamers. Two, people I shouldn't even bother with because I'm just going to end up terrifying them eventually. And I stand by that because one of the things I love about the gaming community is clearly not everybody accepts me for who I am. There are many, many people who still to this day make me into something I'm not. I believe in some cases deliberately. But a lot of people do accept my tendency to just go, you know what? I'm going to respond authentically to something. It may not be nice, but it is my authentic reaction and I have my reasons. And, to get 1,000 people supporting me on that, I have to remember, that is a thing of beauty. That is something a lot of people don't have. A lot of people do not have that acceptance of, hey, like a bunch of people are mad at you, but you know what? A bunch of people aren't. A bunch of people support your right to be you. And I think a lot of people in games media, because there's this cycle of shit, like pigeons pooping on other pigeons, they focus on that. They focus on the haters instead of the people who like their content. And that's part of the problem. And as somebody who used to do that, that's why I say it's a mark of massive immaturity. You have to get beyond that and you have to make content for the people that like what you do, not the people that hate what you do. Going for hate clicks is just a great way to destroy your soul. It's a great way to get a lot more traffic, but I have made my choice and I stand by my choice. In that lane, there was a fascinating ongoing discussion on Twitter. Yes, I said a fascinating ongoing discussion on Twitter where just sort of by accident, me and a few other people actually refined a working definition of the term woke. Because I put up a tweet and said, I admit I've lazily slipped into using the term woke, and I have to admit I'm not sure what it means. Because my understanding of woke used to be the old like 60s and 70s black civil rights, stay woke, right? That was what I understood it to mean, which means an awareness of sort of civil injustice. Obviously, that's not what the word means anymore. And I said, by context, it seems to mean something too far for my experience for me to be able to see the sincerity of it. Now, that caused a bit of pushback. I was prepared for that. Okay, what resulted? Some people responding in good faith and saying, this is what woke means to me. And I was able to drill down and ask some questions. And some people responded much more thoughtfully than others. And it ended up getting a definition that I feel like I can live with. Woke is pejorative, basically means alleged progressivism that's actually bigoted. That's how people use the term woke now as a pejorative. I don't see that many people using woke unironically anymore. Maybe it's just the circles I travel in. And you know, there is context. Some people who are like, stay woke, you know, BLM people might use it. I don't know. That's different. That's the version I understood. That's the unironic use of the term woke. This is the pejorative use of the term woke. But I will accept, even though I don't like the appropriation of the term personally, there's a difference between not liking something personally and saying nobody should use the word, right? If people are using woke to refer to progressivism that's actually bigotry, well, personally, I'd prefer people just say, well, that's progressivism that's actually bigotry, right? That's not actually progress. That's a big step backward because your advocacy is based on stereotype. That's clearer. But I can accept that definition of the pejorative use of the term woke. You see how dialogue benefits, you know? And this is why I like these sorts of conversations. And I talk all the time about how I don't like how the noise drowns out these well-meaning attempts to get to clarity. We start in completely different places. And, you know, I don't think I have the market cornered on language. So if somebody uses a term differently than me, as long as they can define the term, that's cool. I'm not going to argue them. No, that's not what the word means. That's not what the term means. I don't fucking care as long as I know what they mean by the term, right? There we go. That's how to internet. No, I'm joking. That's how to human. Somebody else brought up an interesting thing about the presumed male audience, and that it would be, and I wholeheartedly agree with this, much better if people talked about personality types as opposed to identities. I would frigging love that. As an atypical human, I would love that. Love it, love it, love it. Because I hear every week from people who are dealing with so much stress because their interests don't match what is typical. I'm one of them. I've been venting to people a lot lately because I get very frustrated being treated like this weirdo because people don't believe I actually like the stuff I like. You know, I have the odd experience of my own mother every so often going, "Oh yeah, you're a boy." I take that as acceptance. That's her way of coping with my love of Underdark characters from Dungeons and Dragons. But every so often, I think about that. And that's just, I mean, my mother is also somebody who talked all the way through Spider-Man No Way Home because she had not seen any Marvel movie with Doctor Strange. And so she had no idea what was going on. She hadn't seen any of the Andrew Garfield movies, anything with Doctor Strange. And so it was, who's that guy? That's Green Goblin, Mom. I thought Green Lantern's a DC character. No, Mom. She called him Green Lantern. I said, no, Mom, Green Lantern's a DC character. Oh, who's that guy? That's the Lizard, Mom. He has a tail. Yes, it's the Lizard, Mom. Why is that guy doing magic? That's Doctor Strange. Who? He's strange? That's what's his name? Yeah, that's Benedict Cumberbatch, Mom. He's strange? Mom, have you not seen Doctor Strange or any of the Avengers movies? No. She was just there because she liked Tom Holland. So we're going to see Uncharted next week. And sometimes you just have to chill, right? I mean, I'm laughing about it because I've spent my whole life kind of, bumping up against this gender thing. And I had a really good debate with somebody I like and respect very much about what gender and what gender roles and what gender identity do in our society. Because, I mean, this is why I fit in games. Everything's like, what's the mechanic here? What does this do? And I know that's my bias because I know other people have this really strong identity. And, I actually said to somebody, if I can just change my pronouns and radically reduce the number of people who assume things about me that aren't the case, and I can just not feel horrendously insulted by the way people assume it's okay to treat me, why wouldn't I do that? Now, obviously, I was being hyperbolic and provocative there. But again, that's more about performance than identity. It's different things. There's role, performance, and identity, and, they're not all the same. But I do think we need to be able to ask these questions and really go, what's identity and what's personality? And now that we live in a highly scientific world, why should anybody tell anybody that they are stuck in a way that makes them miserable if through, anything that isn't hurting anybody else, they're going to feel happier, more fulfilled, and more like themselves? These people who are scaring the crap out of trans people in the US right now, they have no empathy for, body dysphoria. They have no empathy for the idea that, hey, maybe the meat sack you were born in works for you, but it doesn't work for other people. And, you figure out pretty damn early in life that your soul was probably misdelivered. And you know what? Some people solve that one way. Other people solve that other way. And all ways are okay. Why? Because that's maximum freedoms for maximum number of people. And this is why first principles thinking is so important. And this leads me to another interesting point that I think a lot of people are missing. A bunch of people in the comments, there is this ongoing misunderstanding about my views regarding feminist frequency and tropes versus women. I think they're categorically wrong about a huge number of things. I do not believe they're evil. Why? Because they did not make themselves the industry standard. As one commenter put it, a great many people in the press and the industry use feminist frequencies content to confirm their own bias, not actually change their thinking. And the insidious thing about feminist frequency is that they really do appeal to that white male guilt, white straight male guilt. That idea that, you know, that fear of, am I a predator? Is my sexuality evil? And okay, women have a completely different messed up, is my sexuality evil, negative self-talk thing. I would love to be able to do something about that. I don't know what. More and more I start thinking I need to do some stuff on men's issues. I just have no idea where to start, and have no idea, and I know I've talked about this before, I have no idea how to present that in a way that isn't seeming to tell men their experience. And obviously I have concerns about that. I'm happier listening, you know, asking pointed questions, challenging assumptions. But, and I know a lot of you guys have been saying recently with content, I want more of this. I want more of this. I admit I'm just a bit lost as opposed in terms of where to go. Cause this is going to sound maybe weird, but I really don't want to appropriate that perspective. I don't want to speak for people. So there's got to be a way, and this is why I do these feedback sessions. I'm reading people's comments. I'm not saying I know what you think. I'm a real not fan of mind reading. On a similar point, once again, we got is the male gaze a bad thing? Whew, okay. Yes, people are new to my content. You haven't seen the thing. No, the male gaze is not inherently a bad thing. The problem arises when a work of entertainment applies the male gaze and claims that it's a universal gaze. Now, you guys know I don't believe in traditional male gaze theory because a lot of people talk to me about their kinks and porn preferences. There's no single male gaze. There isn't even a single white male gaze. There are more gazes than people. I swear to God, I am constantly educated about what people find sexy and arousing. And Hollywood tries to sort of go, this is what men want. And it's complete bullshit. I don't even think it's a majority opinion. This is what we want men to want. This is what we want to tell men they should want. That's more it. It's like a coercive male gaze. It's telling men this is normal for you to lust after, as opposed to this is what you actually like. And I personally think that's really insidious. As somebody who deliberately defied, when I was a television producer, deliberately defied traditional male gaze theory about what men want with the late night show that I produced and then co-starred in, called Ed and Red's Night Party, and there was a hot tub and dancing girls with sometimes poles and stuff like that. We deliberately were like, we're not gonna have all the women look alike. We're gonna have the every size, shape, color in the rainbow. We were incredibly popular in men's prisons. We tried to have male dancers as well and got the feedback that's not the kind of male appeal we want. Even the women our viewers didn't want a male dancer. They wanted guys who were sort of more relatable, like more approachable. They wanted guys for their personalities. That was just our audience, right? So we tried that. It didn't work. We tweaked it. So we had male and female representation. And I mean, those dancers and girls in the tub, they had big personalities too. Because the whole point was they had to be able to talk whenever they wanted. They weren't just there to be looked at. This is what I did with my women's studies university education, folks. Made feminist eye candy. That men like to. And I got called a sexist and a gender traitor and a dumb slut because of it. The world, right? Okay. The last comment I want to address, because we're coming up on the half-hour mark. is this idea that comes up every so often that Leanna is so close to understanding this, but she's not factoring in intersectionality and the progressive stack and critical theory and all that stuff. And I just want to address that because I can say it's not true all I want, but that's not going to work, right? That's not going to be persuasive because I keep saying that and this comment keeps coming up. In order for that to be a legitimate mechanic in this whole fight over video games, the people dropping those terms would actually have to meaningfully understand intersectionality and critical theory. The progressive stack is something I admit. I was talking to somebody again this week. I know what it is. I know broad strokes what it is. I do not understand it well enough to even get into it. It just sounds like malarkey to me. It just sounds like, see, you cannot have the progressive stack and have intersectionality theory at the same time. They are polar opposites to each other because intersectionality indicates that every person's relationship to their various identifiers is unique. And you can take two people who look identical on paper. You know, the example is always two black transgender lesbians. They're both going to have different relationships to those various parts of their identity. And they can't separate one bit from the other. That's what intersectionality is actually about. That you can't take a person and carve them up into their identifiers and neatly stack them up and go, okay, well, this person is more oppressed than this person. It's just too complex. But that's exactly what the progressive stack does. Now, I don't know, again, I don't know enough about the progressive stack. I've tried to do reading on it. It seems to be more of a like Myers-Briggs of social theory. It's interesting as a discussion point and a common terminology, but is it provable? Is it immutable? No, it's a common vocabulary. You know, I don't, my understanding of what the way it's used is not the way that it's been applied on the internet. I mean, you certainly don't see it in gaming websites. My God, they're still so white male dominant. They cannot keep minority or even, you know, most female talent for more than, you know, measured in months as opposed to years. Something's really wrong there. And they certainly don't use an intersectional approach, because if they did, they'd be allowing multiple critics to offer their opinions on, you know, the same titles and have them all be treated on an equal footing. It's not what happens at these websites. It's still the default view is white male liberal and, you know, maybe 60-40 straight gay. Everybody else has to scramble for the leftover space because those were the guys that, you know, got the jobs when their friends, hey, I have a website, you want to write? Okay. Everybody else actually had to come in and show some skill, allegedly. And, you know, then we get into critical theory and people drop this term critical theory and then they add like critical whatever. Critical theory is a term, like I said about feminism later, it is so big. Defining it is almost useless. It's It's a form of social philosophy. And it is another thing that we don't need a term for the idea of writing, op-ed writing that attempts to critique and change culture. Op-ed writing is by nature an attempt to persuade, or it should be, right? That's why they're changing it to commentary instead of opinion and editorial. I don't want to come across as poo-pooing people's concerns about these terms, because the concern is sincere. And this is just the way I think, I'm not going to blame modalities of thought for the output of people who butcher them, right? To me, that would be the same as going, well, somebody thinks Dark Souls should be more accessible, or Sekiro should be more accessible or whatever. Well, they have an opinion, therefore they're automatically right. They have Kotaku or Polygon. They must be automatically right. No, do you seem to know what the hell you're talking about? If you don't seem to know what the hell you're talking about, I'm not going to give your opinion any weight. The same is true with these comments. I mean, I teach intersectionality briefly when I do my talk on gender at the college level, gender as system in gameplay, in game design. And I show the fact that, you consider factors, and I actually use intersectionality theory to apply different motivators for game design and show that you don't need a lot of money as long as you're aware of, and this goes to the personality thing, the reasons the majority of people play games. And so, if you talk about the motivators of, the average man, the average woman, and then the average non-binary trans person, well, then you get a cross-section of everybody and you have a pretty inclusive game. And you don't have to do any demographic analysis. You just include all the points. That's how intersectionality actually works, because the gamer identity is an identity. One would say it's not immutable, but, people say wealth isn't immutable as well, and that's why it seems to get lost from these discussions. But wealth sure matters. Class, especially in places like the UK, it doesn't matter how much money you have if you're not connected. They still have a blinking House of Lords. Not to slam the UK, it's just a comparison, right? It's a really short-sighted, and I'm not going to legitimize. And again, I don't want to be poo-pooing people's opinions here and concerns. It's just personally for me, I'm not going to legitimize people who don't know what they're talking about by validating that they understand a theory they clearly don't, by saying, okay, they get to control an element of the dialogue here. They are representative of intersectionality or critical theory or whatever, especially intersectionality. It's like they just don't know shit from Shinola, so I'm not going to say they're an expert on shoe polish, right? Do people know what Shinola is? I feel old. All right, I'll leave it there. You know what's coming. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaCry, or a one-time coffee donation. Buy someone a Leanna Care session. We need 3 a week to keep going. Everybody have a great weekend, and thanks for watching.